Hello, dear friends. I do not like to tell my personal stories, but sometimes there is no choice but to be a witness to what has been lived and experienced. Let this serve as a break from the Russian-Ukrainian salad that we are living with the pain of human suffering. In times of war, it is good to take refuge in spirituality. Tomorrow, I will comment on the conflict. Opinion piece. Beauty will save the world. Searching for the origin of being. Riders of the lost time. The goal is to know oneself. Searching for Milton's Paradise Lost. Searching for spirituality in times of war. I discovered my spiritual origin 30 years ago. The Lama Chung Chung monastery is named after me. It is located in the Himachal Pradesh state of India. The Kali Gandaki is the deepest gorge in the world. I was a sweeper like Fray Escoba or Saint Martin de Porres. I reached a certain enlightenment by sweeping up my own mental garbage. That's why my favorite movie is Cantinflas' Brilliant Sweeper. The first Christians accepted the doctrine of reincarnation. One attains one's own essence by being simple and natural, said Tilopa. The soul reincarnates successively until it reaches the core of the gods. Fulcanelli called them unknown brothers of the mysterious city of the sun. Shangri-La is an earthly paradise of eternal happiness and almost immortal beings. Ancient Tibetan scriptures mention the existence of 7 hidden paradises. The final battle against evil is prophesied in the ancient legend of Kalachakra. Let's start. The awareness of beauty will save the world, said Fyodor Dostoevsky. Human beings know beauty through culture, an integral part of which is artistic creation, but they also know it through nature. Beauty is commonly described as a quality of objects that makes them pleasing to perceive. Such objects include landscapes, sunsets, human beings, of works of art. In Platonic philosophy, there is an exemplary prototype of beauty, to which certain forms of reality tend in a continuous search for beauty itself. I have never accepted to be born with the memory of my past lives erased by the angle of oblivion, and that is why I have spent half of my life searching for my remote past in my unconscious. They say that it is said that this is remembered naturally when enlightenment is attained, but I have wanted to find out earlier, to know myself better, because the past explains the present, and to seek enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. It's not about delusions or grandeur, because many people have been prominent people in past lives as well as humble farmers, but only to seek the truth about oneself. A testimony is a first-person discourse in which the experiences of a human being about some event are recounted. It is common in some spiritual traditions to hold meetings where testimony is used as a discourse capable of generating credibility about the events it narrates, often referring to individual experiences considered close to God, such as encounters, dreams, visions, signs, revelations, etc., in which a human being attests to a a singular event, generally spiritual, of which he or she has been the object and therefore the only witness. Lost horizons. Who has not looked for a lost paradise? Shangri-La or Shambhala is the toponym of a place described in the novel Lost Horizons, published in 1933 by the British writer James Hilton. The term is applied to describe an earthly paradise, but especially to a Himalayan utopia, an eternally happy land isolated from the outside world. Hilton describes Shangri-La as a mystical and harmonious valley, gently guided from a monastery, enclosed in the western end of the Kulum Mountains. The people who live in Shangri-La are almost immortal, living hundreds of years longer than the other human beings and aging very slowly. In the ancient Tibetan scriptures, 7 such places are mentioned as hidden lands similar to Shangri-La, created by Padmasambhava or Guru Rinpoche in the 9th century as idyllic and sacred refuges in times of conflict. Shambhala. In various spiritual traditions, Shambhala is a mythical kingdom hidden somewhere beyond the snow-capped mountains of the Himalaya range. The first king of Shambhala was named Suchandra and claimed to be an emanation of Vajrapani. In the 2016 movie Doctor Strange, the Wi-Fi password of his Sanctum Sanctorum is Shambhala, referencing this myth for the mystical context of Marvel's own story. Nikolai and Elena Roerich led an expedition from 1924 to 1928 aimed at Shambhala. They also believed that Beluga Mountain in the Altai Mountains was an entrance to that realm, a common belief in that region. The French writer Alexandre David Nel associated Shambhala with Balkh in present-day Afghanistan. On December 2, 1923, Nikolai Roerich arrived in India with his family, where there he started the expedition route through the difficult to access regions of Central Asia. The very complicated route of the expedition passed through Sikkim, Kashmir, Ladakh, Xinjiang, China, Russia, Siberia, Altai, Mongolia, and Tibet, through the uncharted regions of the Trans-Himalayas. The research lasted from March 1925 to May 1928. The great Russian artist Nikolai Roerich creates an absolutely new concept of culture based on the ideas of living ethics. Culture is closely connected with the problems of the universal evolution of mankind and is the great pillar of this process. Culture is based on beauty and knowledge, he wrote, and he repeated the famous phrase of Fyodor Dostoevsky, "The consciousness of beauty will save the world." Initiation. On the day of the full moon of the 3rd month, on the steppe of Dayankataka in southern India, before a gathering of countless bodhisattvas, dakas, dakinis, gods, white magicians, and gnomes, Buddha taught the doctrine of Kalachakra, or the wheel of time, at the request of King Suchandra. Who returned to Kalapa, King Suchandra built a 3-dimensional Kalachakra mandala. I was fortunate to be initiated into Kalachakra by Sakya Trithin Rinpoche, head of the Sakya lineage, meaning the unbroken line of transmission of teachings from the Buddha himself. This initiation changed my life for the better. The Kalachakra Tantra prophesies that when the world decays into war and greed, and all is lost, the 25th Kalki king, Maitreya Buddha, will emerge from Shambhala with a huge army to defeat the dark forces and usher in a global golden age. This final battle is prophesied for the year 2424 or 2425 in the year 30,304 after Buddha's death. Thereafter, Buddhism would survive for another 1,800 years. This prophecy is very similar to the second coming of Christ. It is said that when the world enters an age of war and evil, and all is lost, the king of Shambhala, Rudra, will come out of this secret city with a great army to eliminate and repel evil and begin the new age of purity. In Shambhala, there are 32 kings, each reigning for 100 years. During the reign of the 32nd king Rudra Chakri, evil will attack Shambhala with a huge army equipped with terrible weapons. In the last great battle, the good of the king of Shambhala, Rudra Chakri, would stop all those who experienced evil. Paradise lost. All human beings with spiritual longings seek Paradise Lost by John Milton, a 17th century narrative poem that is considered a classic of English literature and has given rise to a widespread literary theme in the world literature. It is divided into 12 books and it seeks, It is divided into 12 books and exceeds 10,000 verses written without rhyme. The poem is an epic about the biblical theme of the fall of Adam and Eve. The work deals fundamentally with the problem of evil and suffering in the sense of answering the question of why a good and all-powerful God chooses to permit evil when it would be easy for him to prevent it. Milton begins by expressing the purpose of justifying God's ways by answering through a psychological description of the main protagonist of the poem, God, Adam, Eve, and the devil, whose attitudes ultimately reveal the hopeful message behind the loss of the original paradise. In the poem, heaven and hell represent states of consciousness rather than physical spaces. The work begins in hell, described through references to the permanent dissatisfaction and despair of its inhabitants, from where Satan, defined by suffering, decides to take revenge on God indirectly, that is, through the newly created beings who live in a state of permanent happiness. Paradise Lost has had an important reception, being continuously commented and translated during the European enlightenment of the 18th century. Gottfried van Swieten based himself on it to write the text that would serve as the basis for the musical composition The Creation by Joseph Haydn, an important oratorio that takes up the first part of Milton's text. It ends with the creation of Adam and Eve and their praises to God without presenting the subsequent episodes that will lead to a loss of paradise. It is not a physical paradise, in my view, but a loss of enlightened consciousness. Reminiscences. A native of the sign of the crab and a history buff like the French writer Marcel Proust, I have always, as a native, I have always gone in search of the lost time, in search of my own past, and I have found many clues. Today I will talk about one of them because I have several timelines, like all human beings. Who am I? Where I come from and where I am going are the three fundamental questions that any human being who wants to evolve on a spiritual level to reach the enlightenment that Buddhism and many other spiritual traditions talk so much about. It is easier to know who I am if I know where I come from, and it is easier to know where I am going if I know better the goal I have sought for many lifetimes. I have never sought power or fame, but it has always come naturally to me without seeking it, simply by being different from the average citizen of the Matrix. In this life, I was a newspaper editor several times, but I always resigned because I've never liked to have power over anyone or anyone to have power over me, because I love freedom above all else. I mean director of newspaper, not simple editor. Discovering your past before this life is never like watching a complete Hollywood movie, but rather trailers, pieces of fragments of a puzzle that you then solve little by little. The goal is not to delight the ego with your past glories and miseries, which sometimes torment me, but only to know yourself better in order to raise your frequency and facilitate your spiritual evolution. Sometimes you get clues from the most unusual places, such as dreams, internet searches of practice of conscious and scientific regressive therapy, because this therapy is recognized as an official branch of psychology, and I spent a lot of money on it, although I have not practiced it for many years. Reincarnation. Reincarnation is the belief that the individual essence of people, soul or spirit, begins a new life in a different body or physical form after biological death. This belief is popularly known as metempsychosis, transmigration, reincarnation, and rebirth. All these terms allude to the existence of a soul or spirit that travels or appears through different bodies in order to learn in different lives the lessons provided by the existence in the parallel worlds, in which it chooses to reincarnate until reaching an ascension of the state of enlightened consciousness through the experiences lived, which will allow it to continue evolving as part of a great divine spirit. The belief in reincarnation has been present in humankind since ancient times, in most Eastern religions such as Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and Taoism, and also in some African and tribal religions of America and Oceania. In the history of mankind, the belief that a deceased person with a more evolved personality will live again and appear in another body, has survived even within the Judeo-Christian religions, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, in the forms of various unofficial and unofficial, not official, beliefs. And the so-called Dhammic religions, originating in Hinduism, affirmed that reincarnation exists in an endless cycle or wheel of karma. As long as good deeds or spiritual methods with good purpose or dharma are not sufficient to cause a liberation or cessation of this cycle. The spiritual traditions on the various Asian countries, such as Ancestorism in China or Shintoism in Japan, incorporate reincarnation and greatly influence the popular devotion and culture of these countries. Christianity. Most of the early Christians accepted the doctrine of the reincarnations, since it was a widespread belief in the cultural context of the time. Within the doctrine of the soul, in Hermeticism, is found that the soul is the container where the faults of human beings are poured, and once the body is dissolved, they may rise or be punished for their impiety and attachment to bodily passions. The souls will pass through the elements in a process of progressive purification, reincarnating until they reach the core of the gods. For this would be the reward that awaits those who live in impiety and attend to the world with dilations. But those who live in impiety will be denied their return to heaven and will begin an ignominious immigration, unworthy of a Holy Spirit imprisoned in a foreign body. The souls are ordered by the sentinels of providence, the psycho-guardian and the psycho-guide. The psycho-guardian is the watchman of the souls, not yet incarnated, and the psycho-guide is the one who leads and points out their tasks to the souls while they are being incorporated. Research. The writer Ian Stevenson claimed to have investigated many children who claimed to remember a past life. He conducted over 2,500 case studies over a period of 40 years and published 12 books, including 20 cases that make one think of reincarnation and where reincarnation and biology intersect. Stevenson methodically documented the statements of each child and subsequently found the identity of the deceased person with whom the child had identified and verified the facts of the deceased person's life that matched the child's memories. He also found matches of birthmarks and birth defects with the deceased's wounds and scars, certified by medical records as well as autopsy photographs. Stevenson sought refuting evidence and alternative explanations to the reports and thought that his strict methods ruled out all possible normal explanations for the children's memories. Others who have conducted research on reincarnation include Jim B. Tucker, Brian Weiss, and Raymond Moody. Lama Chung Chung. There was a Buddhist practitioner named Lama Chung, called the stupidest man alive at the time, who joined the monastery with his brother to study the Dharma. Unlike his brother, a star student, Lama Chung quickly discovered that he had little added aptitude for study and became very discouraged. The abbot very kindly entrusted Lama Chung with the task of keeping the monastery grounds swept. Every day, as he worked with his broom, Lama Chung thought to himself, "Remove the dirt, abandon the stain." And soon he began to think about removing the stains of a negative karma in his mind stream. His daily sweeping became a daily purification practice. In this way, he became enlightened in a single lifetime. In quotes, "By doing nothing but being simple and natural, one attains one's own essence," says the Mahamudra chant of Tilopa. A Lama is a spiritual master, someone capable of showing others the unequivocal path to liberation and enlightenment. Monk should not be confused with Lama, for monkhood is not a requirement for the status of spiritual tutor or mentor. The Tibetan tradition attaches crucial importance to the role of the teacher, but today the most important thing is that each person be his or her own teacher, while learning from everyone else. Rinpoche is an honorific title used in Tibetan Buddhism as a way of showing respect for addressing those recognized as tulkus, or the reincarnation of a permanent teacher. Tulkus make the decision to be reborn in the samsara, to benefit other sentient beings on their path to enlightenment. Occasionally, this title is also dedicated to masters who were not initially recognized as a reincarnate Lama when young, but who later presented extraordinary qualities in their experience. Fray Escoba. This resembles the story of Saint Martin de Porres Velázquez, who was a 17th century friar born in the viceroyalty of Peru of the Dominican order. He was the first mulatto saint in America. He is also known as the Saint of the Broom, for being represented with a broom in his hand as a symbol of his humility. This reminds me the movie El Barrendero by the great Mario Moreno Cantinflas. One of the virtues that Martin de Porres possessed, his humility, stood out. He always put others before his own needs. On one occasion, the convent had serious economic difficulties, and the prior had to sell some valuable objects. Martin de Porres offered to be sold as a slave to help remedy the crisis, as a slave himself. But the prior, moved, refused this help. Martin's charismatic personality meant that he was sought after by people of all social strata, high dignitaries of the church and the government, simple people, rich and poor, all found in Martin relief for their spiritual, physical, or material needs. His entire disposition and his unconditional help to his fellow man made him be seen as a saintly man. Although he tried to hide himself, his fame as a saint grew day by day. Many families in Lima received help from Martin de Porres in one way or another. Also, many sick people, the first thing they asked for when they felt serious was, "May the saintly brother Martin come," and he never denied the favor to anyone who could do it. Discovery. 30 years ago, I discovered that I was Lama Chung Chung, that I began my Buddhist career humbly as a broom friar, sweeping the trash out of my monastery while sweeping the trash out of my mind, until I reached a certain enlightenment, and that I lived and meditated in a humble cave in the Kali Gandaki valley in Nepal, meaning the Kali Gorge, which is a tributary of the Ganges River located between the Dhaulagiri and the Annapurna, forming the deepest gorge in the world. Chung Chung means small in Tibetan, but not small in stature, but small in childishness, as I still am now. The gorge separates the main peaks of Dhaulagiri in the west and Annapurna in the east. If one measures the depth of a canyon by the difference between the height of the river and the heights of the highest peaks on either side, the gorge is the deepest in the world. The source of the Kali Gandaki river coincides with the Tibetan border and the division of the Ganges-Brahmaputra basin. The river then flows southward through the ancient kingdom of Mustang, The Kali Gandaki gorge has been used as a trade route between India and Tibet for centuries. Today it is part of a popular trekking route from Pokhara to Muktina, part of the Annapurna circuit. Satsang. My cave was called Nigma Tuktrel, which means satsang, because it was and is facing the setting sun, and is near the Nepalese town of Bharatpur or Bhaktapur. That sadness has been with me ever since, and that is why I cry without wanting to. At the entrance of the cave, there was and is a small esplanade overlooking the valley where I spent many hours meditating in lotus posture. I had many Nepalese followers in the region, but I always dodged them and ran away from them because I am horrified by crowds. Years ago, I made 2 trekking expeditions through this valley, but I didn't find my cave because it was not the right time. One day, a terrible thing happened. They sent a hitman who decapitated me with his sharp sword in one stroke while I was meditating. My death provoked a great mourning in the region to the point that they wrote me a poem and organized funeral ceremonies. What hurt me most was not my own death, which was instantaneous, but the grief of my followers. That hurts a lot. Even now, there are still some people alive who remember me and feel sorry for my martyrdom. I paid the karma for having been a very bitter Jewish Rabbi Yash before, for having dictated death sentences, but I was freed by the blessed child when he visited the central temple of Herod the Great in Jerusalem. But I told that story in another video for the first time in my life. I know there are ancient books that speak of me, but I have not been able to access them, nor do I seek official recognition as a tulku. I just want to be left alone while I fulfill my life mission as a journalist and herald of the New Age. A gift. The gift came to me in a dream few days ago, when I felt the urge to search the internet for certain keywords thanks to my guides. When we all have them, we all have guides, I discovered by chance a monastery bearing my name called Dar Lama Chung Chung, which is in India, whose photo appears on the cover or thumbnail of this video. This labyrinth of monastic dwellings on a hilltop, similar to beautiful Almerian village of Mohakar, is the result of centuries of Mongol attacks. In India's Spirit Valley, Key Monastery looks like a ramshackle of temple of mysticism straight out of fantasy novel, but this Buddhist training camp is actually the result of repeated attacks by Mongol hordes. The exact age of Key Monastery's founding is unknown, but it is believed to originally date back to 1100 after Christ, although many believe the site is even older. Now located on a mountain top, the first structures built by the original monks were much lower. However, as the peaceful Buddhists were attacked by the Mongols in the area, reconstruction efforts simply built on what had gone before, eventually creating the erratic patchwork of rooms, narrow corridors, and hidden courtyards that exist today. Much of the monastery has a clear Chinese design influence. Like many similar structures in the area, dating back to a period in the 14th century, when the style arrived in the area. The interiors are also rich in historical murals and valuable documents for the oldest that have lived in the ever-changing monastery. Today, Key Monastery remains a fully functioning Lama training camp operated by the Gelugpa Order of Tibetan Buddhist monks. Some 250 monks reside at the site, training, cultivating, and generally keeping the millennia-old wonder alive, thanks to the fact that it has not destroyed by Mao Zedong's Cultural Revolution, because it was within Indian territory. And that's all for today. Thanks a lot, dear friends.